If you love home fragrance, but you are not an open flame kind of person, or you just want something that releases fragrance in an area where you're not there to monitor an open flame, then reed diffusers are a great option for you. And today I'm going to go through step by step how I make my new reed diffusers in case you're a business owner that wants to add them to your product line, or you're just making them at home yourself. You can follow along. When it comes to the choice to add reed diffusers to my product line, really the main reason I did it is because I had a store that I normally work with who was asking if I would be making these anytime soon because they definitely had an interest in them. It was not something that was on my radar otherwise. I don't personally use reed diffusers that much. I absolutely see the benefit to them, like especially now as someone with young children. Obviously, it'd be nice to have something that was not an open flame, but still released fragrance, but I just never, I don't know, I never use them. I'm the kind of person who I would buy one, I would put it out, all of the oil would absorb or release into the air, and then instead of getting a new one, I would just let the empty bottle sit there for, it was a really long time. And so it's just not a product that I gravitate towards, but I also it's a really easy thing to add to my product line in terms of supplies. I mean, obviously I still had to do a lot of searching for the right kind of stuff, the right kind of elements to make this the type of diffuser aesthetically that I want to offer. So the research took a long time, but once you have fragrance oil, determining your scents is really the hardest part of making reed diffusers, and that I had no problem. So this felt like the sort of thing that wouldn't be too complicated to add to my product line. And if I know stores are looking to buy it, and just seeing that other, not even competitors of mine, but other businesses like mine offer them, probably means that there's a demand for them. And so it seems like the right time to dive into making them myself. The hardest step was sort of picking the direction of what kind of diffuser I was gonna do. I felt like reed diffusers are so ubiquitous that I wasn't sure that that was necessarily the route I wanted to go. Obviously that was the easiest route in terms of there being the most options for supplies and parts and materials. But I did do a little bit of research on other alternatives. I looked into charcoal diffusers, which seem to be, I don't know, I've seen a few of them that I really like the look of, but when it came to finding the right kind of vessel to hold the charcoal stick, that was really difficult. There's not a ton of people offering something that, what you need for a diffuser of any type is that you need a neck, an opening that's pretty small, and then the bottom has to be bigger. The top has to be small because you don't want too much of it sort of dispersing. That's the whole point of it diffusing, is that it slowly over time does that. And with a charcoal stick is much bigger than the reeds are. Finding the right type of vessel for that, it was just really difficult. And the ones that I could find, I just couldn't make the price point work. It was just the sort of thing where the end product would end up being $50 maybe, and I'm just not, I don't know. It's just not right for my personal brand. I love the way they look, but wasn't gonna work out. Then I also saw some people who were doing lava rock diffusers, which is it's basically like potpourri, but with a more modern aesthetic. And I loved the way that that looked, but, and this is important, if you are a business owner and you're researching new types of products to offer, especially if you've found something that you feel not many people are offering, oh cool, I can be someone who introduces this, I can be one of the first people doing this. It's important to try and get a feel for, is there not a lot of these on the market because people just haven't discovered it yet? Or are these not on the market because other companies have tried this out and producing it on a large scale is not that feasible? And my sense, I don't have data to back this up, but I couldn't find hardly anyone who was offering lava rock diffusers as a business I found one company that was doing it, like a very high-end brand with a lot of different products in their product line. And they had a listing, like I found a listing through Pinterest, but the product was no longer available. Not like we'll be restocking soon, enter your email for when it's available again, like just not available anymore. And that's all I could find. And I feel like with all of the people doing home fragrance, if no one else is doing it, no high, it's not like I found them for like super expensive and that's all I could find. It's like, no, people just aren't doing it. The only people doing it are on Etsy. And that's usually not a sign that it's because people just haven't discovered it yet. Like we all know that if anything, commercial businesses steal ideas from Etsy all the time and like artwork from Etsy. So it's not that they haven't found anyone doing it. I think it means that probably shipping costs are high because like you're sending a bunch of rocks to somebody, like it's heavy. And then the container has to be pretty, I don't know, substantial too. So I played around with that, but even though I loved the way it looked, I really think it's beautiful. Maybe it'll be something that I offer in my storefront, like is something that I don't ship out, but if people come in person, I don't know, something down the road. But eventually I did decide that I think reed diffusers were they had the least amount of obstacles to get it on the market. So I went with a reed diffuser because I wanted to get this product out there and see if people responded to it. And so that's what I decided on. Now, even after I decided I was going to do reed diffusers, I still had to find a vessel and like packaging, like outer packaging for what all the stuff goes into. I had to decide what color reeds I want. You know, it's like nothing's life or death here, but it does take a really long time to order samples and just decide what makes sense for my brand and what am I really going for. So after looking at a bunch of different kinds of vessels, I found these green glass bottles, and I feel like I see a lot of amber glass for reed diffusers, but I have not seen much green glass, and I love green glass. I think it just has such a nice vintage aesthetic, even though it's a modern shape to the bottle. So it's sort of a nice blend of the two things, which I feel like my brand is usually striving for. And I just loved the size of these were perfect. I really love the color. And so that part settled on that. Then when it came to the color of the reeds, I didn't want the sort of typical light tan because I felt like it did not match with the green glass. So I found something that it's more of like a walnut brown, which I think is a really nice look with the green glass. And so those two things were sorted. But another thing that I had to figure out before I finalized anything was how am I gonna seal the bottle? Like when I package this in its outer packaging, obviously it's just like a bunch of oil and liquid. So you need to make sure it's very airtight, the bottle. And luckily the company that I bought the bottles from has a plethora of caps to go along with them. Some of them are a little bit fancier, but I don't really need something fancy because you're not using the cap once you get the product. You're probably throwing it away. And so I went with a pretty basic like cork cap so that it's a really nice seal. You really have to push it in there to get it to seal properly. So it feels pretty secure. And then I also have a shrink wrap, I don't know, I have shrink wrap around the top. You'll also see that when I go through the steps of making it. But that felt pretty nailed down. I figured out the design of the label. The outer packaging, again, it was really hard to find something. Almost all reed diffusers that I could find come in a tall, skinny box because they have to be big enough to fit the reeds. But those boxes, trying to buy those anywhere in bulk, like a nice one that didn't feel like super flimsy and bad, they were so expensive. Again, it's really hard as a small business owner, I'm not going to be producing thousands of these right off the bat. So getting a per piece price that's like reasonable is really tricky. And so I'm like, really what I would love is to have the same kind of tube that my shower steamers come in. but I went to that company's website, and first of all, I don't know that they had any that were the right size. You are able to order custom things from them, but again, custom's expensive. That's definitely not even on the radar for right now. And so instead, I found some U-line tubes. So they are tubes, similar sort of shape. They just have like a top and bottom lid. The tube itself is not that pretty. It's functional. It does exactly what I need. And I like that it's a tube instead of a box. It just, again, is something that feels a little bit unique, even though it's actually cheaper than the boxes that I found. But because it doesn't look great on its own, I will also be wrapping it in a white paper and securing it at the top and bottom so that it just has like a more, again, it feels like a gift. I love for all of my products to feel very giftable. I think it's important that it's the sort of thing that if you put it in a box or a bag to give to someone, they would open it and it would feel really special. So I kind of like that it's wrapped, and it's not that much more work. And at this point, labor is the thing that I can put into these products. I can't put in more money to the materials. So if it takes me a little bit more time to wrap these, but they end up looking really nice at the end, it's worth it to me at this point. So now it's time to actually make these. When it comes to reed diffusers, it's really straightforward in terms of mixing the actual fluid that goes in there. It's basically just your fragrance, which I have all of those already, but you're using about 3 parts of the base or the carrier and then 1 part fragrance oil. So the fragrance oil, straightforward. The base, there's different ways to go on this. Some people just use like a witch hazel, or I believe you can use alcohol too. But for me, I definitely notice the smell of witch hazel even when I've mixed it with fragrance oil. I talked about this a little bit in my video about making your own perfume rollers, that to me, witch hazel has a pretty strong smell. Some people don't feel that way, but I'm sensitive to it. So I did not want just witch hazel as my base. I actually went with a pre-made base from Makesy. I trust them, and I didn't want to go through a bunch of testing to make sure something smells right, whatever. I just believe that whatever they're making, just from experience in working with them, that it's gonna be high quality. There are other suppliers who offer pre-made reed diffuser bases. Makesy's is maybe a little bit more expensive, but again, I wanted the quality to be like unquestionable. And so I just got a base from them. So all I do really to make these is I mix the 3 parts base, 1 part fragrance, mix it for like a good 3 to 4 minutes. You really want to make sure that it is like fully mixed together, no separation, anything like that. And so I just took a whisk and mixed it for like a good 3 to 4 minutes probably. This is where I watch TV while I'm making things, because otherwise just standing and mixing is really boring. I got it mixed up and then I pour it into the bottles. Again, very straightforward. And then once that's done, I wipe off any excess that might have like spilled around the top, and I put those little cork toppers in. Like I said, you do have to push pretty hard to get these like flush with the top of the bottle, which I think is great. That's a good sign. Like I want it to be like that. I want it to be that the shrink wrap is just like a backup, and then really the cork holds everything in. And then next comes the shrink wrap. And I do have to say, I try not to use much plastic in my packaging. I like to avoid it if I can because it is wasteful, but really there's no great alternative that I know of for shrink wrap that is eco-friendly. I know that there's like a bio shrink wrap that's made from like plant materials, but I don't think they offer these little bands. Again, if I'm wrong on that, please feel free to comment below. I would love to go with a different option. But for right now, I've got these little plastic shrink wraps, and it's so satisfying to melt them so that they shrink. Like there's something about that process that's really enjoyable. I will say, if you are doing this yourself, I have found that the best way to do it is to heat the bottom first. You place the little shrink wrap on top, melt the bottom so that that shrinks on and then go up to the top. The first one that I did, I just sort of applied heat, but it was like coming from the top, and it lifted it to a point where it was not sealing the actual like portion of where the cap meets the bottle, and I just had to throw it away. So that's my one little piece of advice. Otherwise, it's pretty easy. Also, when you've got like your pack of shrink wraps and you're placing them on, make sure that the ones you're no longer using get placed far away, like on another surface before you start using the heat gun, because it will melt the ones that are off to the side. Just a little bit, just enough that like you're gonna have to pitch some of them. I also did that. Once the shrink wrap is on there, then I am ready to label the bottle. So this is the part that people are gonna see, so I really wanted these to look nice. For me, there's always this like tough balance between using color or going black and white with any of my products. Like my perfume rollers are black and white, but my shower steamers are color, my soaps have color in them. I feel like it's sort of just, I'm going off of like my instinct of where to use color and where to use black and white. And what I loved when I was planning out the look of these reed diffusers, I was looking at inspiration from like vintage books and artwork on either vintage books or current books that have been produced to look vintage, and the way that the sort of colors looked all together with botanicals. I just found some inspiration images that made me feel like I wanted to go with color. And so I have designed all of these for the different fragrances. They use the same botanical image that are on the corresponding candles for these scents. So there is that like tie to each other. And I just really love the way that they turned out. I also wanted something that wasn't just a standard rectangle or square label. There was something about these bottles that, again, I just wanted them to feel special. And so I found a design that has like an arched top, which I do think just adds, again, like a really nice element of customization, and I think also lends to the sort of like vintage meets modern aesthetic. But because it is that like special shape, I have to make them on the Cricut because it's hard to find, like online labels does not have as a ton of options for like shapes like that. So I make them on the Cricut, which is great. I just get sticker paper from online labels, and then I make the design, enter it into the Cricut software, and print. I can print like 12 labels per sheet, per like sticker sheet, which is pretty good because then the cost per label is really low. And then I'm taking them off the sheet, applying them with my label wizard, my trusty label wizard. Thank God, because these would be super crooked if it weren't for that, I'm sure. And I just love the way that they look sort of all lined up. Obviously, I like them even more when the cap and the shrink wrap is off of them. I just think they're gonna look really lovely sitting like on a countertop or a bookshelf or a nightstand. I want them to be something that is aesthetically pleasing, along with providing fragrance for your home. So I'm really excited about the way that these turned out. I think they feel special. And then what's left really is putting them in their larger outer packaging. I don't have any video footage of this yet because I'm gonna make all of the bottles first and then package them in their larger sizes. But that's tricky too because you want to make sure there's padding inside of the tube. I'm adding crinkle paper to the inside of this. Again, something recyclable that just adds that extra padding so that as these are getting shipped around and tossed around in the mail or UPS or whatever, that the bottle inside is not getting tossed around too much. I want that to stay pretty still. So it gets that. Close up the tube, wrap it in that paper, add a sticker to the bottom with just some general warnings and the Bushyl website, and then I'm gonna do a wax seal on the tops. Because now that I have these wax seals for the soaps, it's sort of like, how can I use these for everything? I love a wax seal. And it also justifies me buying them and like buying the supplies to use them if I can find a bunch of products to use them on. So each one's gonna get a wax seal on the top, and then it's ready to go. I think it's got just, again, a really nice look to it. It makes a great gift, but it's also something fun to buy for yourself. And I'm hoping that stores really like the presentation as well, so that they feel like it's worth buying and offering their customers. So I'll keep you posted on how it goes. If you're making them for yourself, good for you. I also think this is like really the hardest part if you're doing this yourself is finding good fragrance oils. I think with a lot of these, you get what you pay for. And so you might want to get something on the cheaper side just to test out that you like you like doing it yourself. But eventually, if you want something that smells really good, I think it's worth the extra cost. So thanks so much for following along. I hope this was enjoyable and helpful. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps me reach other viewers like you. And you can subscribe if you want to get notified each time I release a new video. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.